Now, on Saturday, South Carolina held their Democratic primary, and the results were actually better than expected for Hillary Clinton. Now, I'm going to break down some of the numbers here for you guys to sort of get where we're at and how she came out of the contest and what's going further for both candidates. All right. Now, the numbers here, total votes. All right. Total percentage of the votes and total votes, Hillary Clinton, resounding victory, 73.47%. That's 270,810 votes cast for former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. All right. Bernie Sanders got about 25.97% of the vote. That's about 95,737 total votes cast for Senator Sanders. So what's the total turnout? Well, the total turnout was about 368,577 votes cast. So huge win for Hillary Clinton. There's no doubt about it. She dominated South Carolina. Now, she was expected to dominate South Carolina, so really not a huge surprise. Now, I mentioned the turnout, right? 368,700 or 577 people. That's votes, right? Now, turnout was pretty dismal. Let me show you. Out of registered voters of South Carolina, there were 2,961,362 registered South Carolina voters. Ballots cast, total, 370,719. That puts the voter turnout of South Carolina in this super important primary, right? That everybody, the whole nation was transfixed with, that's paying attention to. There's a total voter turnout of 12.52%. 12.5% voter turnout. Ouch. Now you could say, and certainly I've said this before, voter suppression. That's got to be a factor. Voter suppression is a factor. Also voter apathy. Also a big factor. So, but nonetheless, whatever's contributed to it, this was a dismal showing for the Democrats. Now, the Republicans, on the other hand, they saw over double. South Carolina, on the Republican side, have over 700,000 votes cast. Jeez. Now, what's interesting about South Carolina is that it's a very conservative state. But the voter turnout was a lot less than it was back in 2008 when President Barack Obama was running. So also very, very interesting. Now, the reason that I bring this up is that it is kind of odd to put so much emphasis on the primary in South Carolina knowing these numbers. In fact, when it comes to South Carolina being so conservative, well, it turns out that when you break it down and you ask people, hey, are you conservative? Are you a moderate? Are you, this is asking Democrats, by the way. Are you a conservative Democrat? Are you a moderate Democrat? Or are you liberal? Well, it turns out that a very large portion of the electorate in South Carolina is actually very conservative, especially when compared to previous primary states. For example, New Hampshire. Now, according to exit polls, 46% of voters identify as a moderate or conservative Democrat, whereas only 32% of Democrats identified as moderate conservative in Iowa, and 30% in Nevada that identified as moderate to conservative. So remember, this is asking Democrats. So Hillary Clinton, she ended up winning in a state with a conservative Democrat majority. Okay. Now, let's go to Senator Sanders for a second here. Sanders won independents in South Carolina by 7 points, voters under 30 by 8 points, first-time primary voters by 26 points. Wow. White men, Bernie bros, by about 12 points, and strangely enough, Bernie Sanders lost on the question of honesty and trustworthiness by about 2%. He actually lost on that question. Wow. That's kind of amazing. Now, Sanders won voters under the age of 29, 54 to 46%. However, they only accounted for about 15% of the electorate. Clinton, however, won voters over the age of 30 at a rate of almost 3 to 1. Jesus. So now you're looking at, okay, more conservative Democrats, and they're older. All majorities that went to Hillary Clinton. Now, the other thing, and this was a big factor as well that helped carry Clinton to winning in South Carolina to victory, was the black vote. Now, Hillary Clinton won with 84% of African Americans. Now, that was a major thing. Now, she also won African Americans everywhere else. In every state that she's ran against Senator Sanders, she has won a majority of the black vote. Now, what makes South Carolina different is that they actually make up about 61% of the total electorate. So if you do well with African Americans, as Clinton does, you're going to do well in a state that has a majority African American population. That's part of the electorate. So she'll do well in those states, and she has shown that she has done well in those states. Now, I think part of that is actually related to some of the policies. Well, why do I say that? According to exit polling, 72% of those surveyed said that they wanted to continue with the policies of Barack Obama. Well, that's interesting, right? Well, that's what Hillary Clinton is doing. Now, you saw in the run-up to South Carolina where she was like, Obama, Obama, Obama. I'm gonna continue Obama's policies. Obama was great. So that was kind of a huge factor when it came to the African American population as well. Now, of those polled, 18% wanted more liberal policies. And 6%, surprisingly, wanted more conservative policies. We don't think you're conservative or right-wing enough. Okay. Now remember, this is among South Carolina Democrats, who are generally more conservative overall, especially when compared to other states, for example, New Hampshire Democrats. Now, on Obama's policies on the economy, for example, have been actually very favorable to Republicans. Now remember, Obama signed in 90% of George W. Bush's tax cuts. They are now permanent, thanks to Barack Obama. Now, some of those tax cuts did go to the middle class, and that's great. But however, the rich also did very well in this arrangement. Former Speaker John Boehner had actually bragged how he got about 99% of what he wanted. Look, when it comes to where he's at in the spectrum, Barack Obama is actually a very centrist, conservative Democrat. He matches up with South Carolina just perfectly, and so does Hillary Clinton. Now, when he was running, he sounded more like a progressive on the campaign trail. But his policies, as you can see, were not really all that super progressive, at least on economic policies. Now, social issues, that's a different thing, which sort of matches up with Hillary Clinton. Liberal on the social issues, is great on women, gay rights now, etc., right? I remember Barack Obama also had to be pushed to be in favor of gay rights. So, it's politics, right? Now, as far as economic policies, they're both more neoliberal, which is to say, corporatist, good for business. All right. Now, that's not to say that she's a Republican or he's a Republican. There's no comparison there. If you want to compare Ted Cruz to Clinton or Obama, dude, you're way off. You're nuts. But if you're looking at a scale of what's accepted as conservative or liberal policies, Clinton and Obama are essentially center-right on economic issues. Whereas Ted Cruz, he is massively right-wing. So don't confuse what I'm talking about when I say conservative or liberal. I'm looking at the old way of looking at things. The Overton window has shifted dramatically to the right. That's why I can say that, look, Obama is center-right, Clinton is center-right, and Sanders is center-left. So now let's get to the issues, right? Continuing on this exit polling. Well, okay, what are the four different things, the four issues that were most important to South Carolina voters? Well, it turns out that the economy and jobs took about 43% at number one, healthcare was at 22%, number two, and income inequality was third, and terrorism was fourth at about 10%. Now this was interesting, right? So 43% economy and jobs, and only 21% care about income inequality. Well, it's no wonder that Sanders' policies and his message didn't exactly resonate in the Palmetto State. It's actually third on the list of issues. Now, for me, I think that should be much higher because income inequality is one of the central issues that defines other issues. So, they continue, right? Now, which one of these four candidate qualities mattered most in deciding how you voted today? Now, interestingly enough, 33% was cares about people like me. That was the number one thing. The number one quality. You care about people like me. Second, actually tied for second, is honest and trustworthy, has the right experience, and 10% can win in November. So they're not worried about electability. They were worried about you care about people like me. Which, once again, it sounds to me how Hillary Clinton won with such a large margin in South Carolina. Doesn't seem to me at all like she cares about people like me. More like she cares about people like Jamie Dimon of Goldman Sachs. But, so, let's get to the another point here. South Carolina isn't actually representative of most of America. So what happened there on Saturday, when it comes to the Sanders campaign, doesn't actually mean it's over. Yes, it's a huge win for Hillary Clinton, no doubt, and will certainly have a huge impact going forward. And it does illustrate her massive advantage among minorities. Now, none of that should be discounted in the least, but at the same time, it is only one state with a very conservative electorate, with a demographic that is not as representative as most states. It actually also has a very small delegate count and a very low amount of voter turnout. To call his loss there the end of the Sanders campaign is misleading and dishonest, especially when we have to realize that we still have 96% of the primary season left to go. It's only just begun. To call any campaign over, unless you're talking about Martin O'Malley, is once again dishonest.